alarming policymakers in Washington. So how do we confront our rivals? Our enemies will be front and center tomorrow when the Senate Intelligence Committee holds a hearing on worldwide threats. One member is Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. He will be there to ask questions and delve into this and joins us now. Senator, welcome to Fox News Live.
Thank you. Good to visit with you again.
Of course, what threat right now are you most worried about?
Actually, it is our southern border right now is a major threat because what we've seen is 50 people on the terror watch list just in the last 4.5 months. We've seen more than 10,000 people come across our southern border, what are called special interest aliens. These are individuals who are literally being trafficked in from all over the world from very vulnerable places. They're coming right at the homeland. That is a major issue for us. Then you move from there. It's obviously what's happening in Europe right now. With Russia and Ukraine in that battle that will most definitely spill over to the rest of Europe if that is not stopped now. Obviously, what's happening in Taiwan and then the destabilization actually in Africa. A lot of people are not talking about, but we've had almost 10 coups in the last 8 years that have happened in Africa, and there's being destabilized and the rise of terrorism there. We're keenly aware as Americans, terrorism thousands of miles away does find its way to be able to come to the United States if we don't find a way to be able to stop it there. So we have plenty of issues to talk about.
Yeah, where do we start first? Let's start with immigration, for example. During the State of the Union, you famously were seen mouthing the words "that's true" when President Biden was chiding some of your colleagues over the bipartisan border bill that former President Trump torpedoed. What is your sense of that, and what do you tell your colleagues? What do you tell former President Trump? That there was something that you had, but the former president said no.
Well, it's not just the former president. There were several others that saying, hey, during an election year is not the time to be able to resolve this. This has obviously been a major point of contention between President Trump, President Biden, because President Biden's been unwilling to be able to enforce the border. He has tools right now to be able to make a significant difference. He's choosing not to do those. And President Biden famously talks about my first day in office, I presented this bipartisan plan. His bipartisan plan he presented the first day in office was wide legalization of everyone who's here illegally and opening our borders up. Then he took executive actions to open the border up. The bill that I was bringing actually, as President Biden was discussing, does increase the number of border agents, the number of ICE agents, the number of deportations. We almost doubled the number of deportations. We increased detention beds. We also changed the way we define asylum, and we rapidly changed the way we deport people out. What I was hearing around me when President Biden was talking was this false narrative that's risen of it lets 5,000 people in a day before it does anything. That's completely false and always has been false, but it's been the big internet rumor. The bill that I was bringing actually detained the very first person that came across, screened them, and then deported them. But if we got to 5,000 people, we don't have the capacity. We're not close at that point. So we took away due process and literally just detained and deported each person. But it was detaining and screening and deporting from the very first person that came across. So yes, I said out loud that's true because the things at that time President Biden was saying was true. What he was conveniently leaving out was all the executive authority he's chosen not to use. He could drop the number by thousands right now, and he chooses not to do that. But we do need additional legal authority that President Trump even asked for when he was president to change the way we handle asylum. That still needs to be done.
Why do you think the president is not taking those executive actions that former President Trump did?
I think he really feels like it looks mean, quote unquote, and he is so sold out to the progressive left that the progressive left is obsessed over him even using the term illegal. Those individuals are illegally crossing. I mean, you can use any other name you want to. They're committing a crime as they're crossing a border. They have illegally crossed a border. That would be the same in any country they crossed into that they have illegally crossed. So to be able to use the term illegal that they're so worked up about, President Biden is so afraid of being labeled by the progressive left as being mean like Trump that he's unwilling to be able to take executive action. What's interesting is I've told President Biden and his team the most basic thing. If you would just enforce the border the same way President Trump did or President Obama did. President Obama's top year of illegal crossing was just over 500,000 in a year. We're now seeing 3 million under President Biden. So if President Biden doesn't want to enforce it like President Trump, enforce it like President Obama did. That'd be better than what he's doing right now, but he's just choosing not to.
Wow. A threat abroad, a major one, Vladimir Putin and his designs on Ukraine. What are your concerns and your fears if Vladimir Putin is not pushed back and if the ammunition and artillery and other weapons that Ukraine needs to fight the Russian forces are not approved by Congress?
Right. We don't have to anticipate what the future will be. We can actually look at the past. When Putin rolled into the country of Georgia, when he rolled into Crimea almost a decade ago, now when he's rolled into eastern parts of Ukraine, he has eyes to be able to create the Soviet Union again, to be able to broaden the bloc. Before he rolled into Ukraine, he declared Ukraine was once part of Russia, and so was Poland. I think he means it. I've spoken to some of the folks from Moldova, again, one of these neighboring countries. They're very concerned. And there's a reason that Sweden and Finland have moved from neutral to joining NATO in the recent days, because they understand full well that Putin means to be able to roll through Europe and to be able to conquer. So we should take that seriously. We should not just ignore it and say, no, he doesn't really mean it. He's really a nice guy. He's not going to do that. He's not a nice guy. He's a brutal dictator and a thug, and he's murdering his neighbors currently. And if anyone thinks he'll just stop by murdering the first neighbor, look at the past and see what he's done.
And finally, Senator, there's some who point to what they say is a pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party. What do you say to those members of the GOP and your colleagues who apparently have kind of gone soft on this autocratic
No, they're not pro-Putin by any means. I haven't run into anyone in the Republican Party that's pro-Putin. They understand what a dictator and a murderous thug that he really is.
Then why haven't they approved the package?
Yeah, that's the bigger concern. There is a move right now among some to say the United States should pull back from the rest of the world, that we should be more isolationist, that we should allow all of Europe to take care of Europe's problems. The issue with that is we've seen that movie before. We saw that in the 20th century when Europe was going to take care of the previous two world wars, and it drew the whole world into it. So getting a war to stop faster is much better than it is to have a war prolong and we actually get drawn into it. So the sooner we can get this war to stop, Ukraine can actually win, push back Putin, the better it'll be for America's not only economy, but protecting American blood and treasure.
The call for Ukraine to win from Republican Senator James Lankford. Senator, thank you for joining us. We'll look forward to the intelligence hearing tomorrow and learn more about how we can protect the homeland and our country. Good to see you.